Welcome to my YouTube channel. Man, I got some good news for you. We're not just sit back and act as if we're not a part of America. We're not going to be quiet or silenced for the next 4 years. Good news out there for the working class, and for the first time in American history, we got an opportunity to separate ourselves from the Democratic Party, to even separate ourselves from the Republican Party, and separate from all the nonsense and cast ourselves as nonpartisan American citizens. Now, you're hearing all the talk about the tariffs. You got governors out of Maryland going to El Salvador to get back, prisoners. You got Gavin Newsom, challenging the sitting and going head to head with the president because of tariffs. Now, the tariffs are actually working contrary to popular belief. Be honest with yourself. Tariffs are basically leveraging tools to basically, bring jobs and to bring money to America, which will put money in Americans' pockets. Jobs, jobs, jobs. So I got some good news for you. Now, if you did not know, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security has been introduced. So instead of our Democrat Trump, why are they not fighting and working for the American people? Good morning to you. Why they're not fighting for the American people? Why they're not doing the job of the constituents? Why they are not going to bat for the working class, for the individuals that's trying to pretty much change their life and their tax administration is working for the working class. Now, I would be a fool to tell you that, billionaires and his billionaire friends and donors are not being, the initial benefactors for his administration, but clearly he is looking out for the American people, and it's not flesh and blood. I got to call shots. I got to call the balls and strikes as they come in, because when you talk about pausing the tariffs, which pretty much shot the stock market back up. And on average, the 401ks for individuals has pretty much went up 600% in just within minutes of that announcement. And then you have foreign countries ready to cut a deal, They're even talking about tax exemption for wage earners earning less than $150,000. Could you imagine if our Democratic elected officials went to bat for the people? Could you imagine if our Democratic officials said, you know what, we're going to fight for the people. It's not about President Trump. No security, no tax on overtime, tax exemption for wage earners earning less than $150,000. We want to abolish, and I'm saying this, abolish capital gains taxes. This will be something that will be epic, and it will be basically focused on the American people. But our elected officials, since our Democratic elected officials has decided to take down Trump, it's kind of like terrorists on an airplane trying to take down the pilot. We're all on the plane, and no matter who's driving, we want to be safe. We want a smooth ride, and we want to land at our destination. But when you have the Democratic Party has abandoned the American citizens, they haven't abandoned the Democratic Party. They have abandoned the American people, because no matter if in office, we're supposed to be working with legislation that somehow is going to work out for the average Joe Blow. But with this, now you have the Congressional Black Caucus. Where's the Congressional Black Caucus? Where is the representation for Black Americans? Okay, because they know, and they are operating with the party of slavery, and in their entire candidacy and their entire political career has been predicated on white supremacy. So now that we know these are just black faces and do anything that they want to do, because like Kamala Harris said during the campaign trail, hands are tied. Okay, there's voters and then there's donors. So they can only do what the donors do. And right now it seems that they're protecting, which is unfolding to be the biggest scam in American history. Now think about that. The Doge organization ran by Elon Musk said they have found so much money in the form of trillions of dollars that pay down the national deficit. Let that sink in. And it hurts my heart. Look at all the hard work, all the fighting, all the marching that Black Americans has done to get into a position of power for us to take 100 steps forward and 1,000 steps back. Because when I turn the TV on and I look at, Congress on C-SPAN or whatever network I'm looking at, and I'm seeing individuals like Jasmine Crockett represent Black America. No, say hi. How you doing? She's representing herself. I'm a human being. I'm not a bot. So good morning to you all. When I look at Jasmine Crockett, it hurts my heart because as a Black man, I realized, and in the time that I was growing up, that we had to be better we had to be, a head above shoulders. We had to have class and we had to have dignity and respect. And we did that to get to positions of power. And now that we have gotten to these positions of power, and now you have individuals like Jasmine Crockett with a hood rat and an hoochie literally operating on her own axle. It is what it is. Operating on her whole axle. And you guys in the comments are crazy. Okay. I'm not a bot. I'm a human. And you usually see people like me on your major networks, on your NNs and your MSNBCs and your Fox News because I'm so polished. But I cannot sell my soul. So I decided, Bouchon, my name. So I decided to step out on faith and to work with whatever administration is in office. Okay. So if you got elected officials and then you have what we call selected officials, a selected official perspective, I'm a special ambassador to the Trump administration for Black American and humanitarian affairs, meaning that's the working class and the middle class. My sole purpose is to educate, motivate, to educate and to motivate the working class. So when you talk about 100 days in office, okay, he's only looking out for his millionaire friends and all that. Somebody got to come out and say, stop the presses. Okay. And so as a Black man, I cannot be supportive of the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party destroyed themselves. They're exposing themselves. Cory Booker a few weeks ago did a filibuster and he pretty much controlled the news cycles for about 24 to 48 hours. But what was the end game to that filibuster? He didn't protest anything. He just did it. And he wanted to break Strom Thurmond's record of the longest filibuster. And at least Strom Thurmond was pretty much opposing civil rights. And he was also a Democrat as well. So what was Cory Booker opposing? He did the filibuster. Nothing. Okay. It was a public shaming ritual. Okay. He wore, some Depends. He pooped and pissed himself. And at the end of the day, where is he at right now? Okay. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, he's pretty much, fighting for his political career. Okay. And his donors because he did a press conference and wants to stop Trump's tariffs because in California. What does it do with the American people? There is so much crime, so much, poverty going on in the state of California, but wants to have a press conference because he has to do what he's told because his donors told him to get out there, okay, and fight for China. Think about it, because all of this stems from the tariffs that we're imposing on China. Everybody else is coming to the table, but China has pretty much taken our intellect. They steal our ideals. They're taking money. And at the end of the day, Nancy Pelosi was actually on the Congress floor back in 1996 saying that China was the biggest threat. And it's not fair because China, in terms of what America's doing, is creating tens of millions of jobs for China. And what are we getting in return? What are we getting in return? Not a thing. So now that we, the people, are realizing that we cannot be sitting back and being silent. So we got individuals that's going to start to have these conversations, because if you rely on your news outlets, the programming, you will be mad and pissed off on a daily basis. But now we get an opportunity because the greatest phenomenon that has happened in the last 20th century is the internet. And you can actually get your news otherwise. And I'm going to go ahead and say, please fact check everything that I'm saying. Because when you fighting for the working class typically goes to work, pills, they got the kids, they got to pick the kids up, they got sports. They're so busy that they can only catch the evening news. And the evening news sometimes is manipulating. So I'm going to give it to you straight. America is winning in Trump. It's not flesh and blood. Okay, it's not about the man. Okay, it's powers, places that have issue with our sitting president. and they have paid finance. Think about this. They have paid and financed the campaigns for all these individuals that's shaming themselves by getting on TV on a daily basis, being ignorant, not talking to the American people, but pretty much trying to take down the pilot of the plane that we all are riding on. And it doesn't make sense. And that's metaphorically speaking. So I got some good news for you today. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security has been introduced. Okay. And what we are doing, we are bringing and shedding light on these bills that have been introduced because them to be on the House floor and to floor vote immediately. Think about that. Could you imagine if our Democratic elected officials said, we cut a deal, we just left the meeting with the Trump administration, we're going to hold him accountable to all the words that he have said in terms of working for the middle class, because 99.9% of our constituents somehow fall in the working middle class bracket. So no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. So go ahead and have an emergency floor vote for that. But our elected officials don't want to do that. They're not working for the American people. They're working for their own careers and for the donors who don't like Trump, and their job is to take him down. Let me see. Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, is basically speaking, and they're having conversations of pretty much abolishing taxes, or basically tax exemption for wage earners earning less than $150,000. Think about that. $150,000. It's a lot of American citizens, in the pretty much all working class, pretty much fall that tax bracket, because if you over that $150,000, you would somehow find yourself in the middle class. But the middle class is pretty much, getting destroyed. Because did you know, if you made over $500,000 a year, being taxed at a 37% tax bracket, meaning if you earn $1 million, you got to give the federal government $370,000. Okay, that's punishment for making money. So think about that. And they're talking about a flat tax after the $150,000 threshold, a tax bracket of just 10%. Okay, we can make it up through consumption. We can have these conversations if the Democrats don't want to come to the table and they continue to try to take down the pilot. Okay, then that means they're trying to crash out and crash the plane, and they're trying to make the American citizens casualties. And we're not going to let that happen, because we, the people, have separated. Okay, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or indifferent, separating, we're organized in the middle as the nonpartisan independents, and we're going to hold from a futures perspective, present and future perspective, we're going to hold the sitting president, no matter if they're Republican or not. We're going to hold them accountable, because the working class must stand up, because the class has been paying America's bills forever. Now, tax season, the deadlines is pretty much just came in, and you all know that you guys are paying tax. You have illegal immigrants that's not paying taxes. You got people that work under the table that don't pay tax. And it's not fair to the wage earners for their money to be taken before they can actually, get their own money. That's where you talk about the gross and the net income. Okay, they let you know, they give you a printout. This is what we took from you, your hard-earned dollars, and now you figure out what you're going to do with it. And in light of the economy, in light of the way things are going, we can, get some tax breaks, have a conversation about tax breaks, because this is where we are right now, because America can't survive on what we call a consumption tax. Now, the Doge, the 5,000 stimulus checks still on the table because they stopped the frivolous spending. The federal government, the Trump administration, is pretty much having conversations about a $3,800 stimulus package or stimulus check for the federal government. But you will not hear this, because the owners of the legacy media, the owners of the mainstream media, are the enemies or the ops of our sitting president. And that is crazy. So what are we, the people, are going to do? We got to let the world know that we are America. We love this country, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We love the country, and we're going to support this country, but we cannot do it sitting back, allowing our so-called elected Democratic officials to go to bat for the American people, because clearly they have pretty much, just looking out for themselves and their donors, because it's 14 elected Democratic officials that's pretty much who's in the tax bracket who are over I'm going to say this again, who are worth over $4 million. Let that sink in. 14 Democratic elected officials on a $245,000 annual salary are worth more than $40 million. Let that sink in. And if you did not know, from a stock market perspective, they somehow know the stocks better than one of the greatest investors in the world, Warren Buffett. And he said that himself. So when you talk about better trading, when you talk about all these things that's going on, it is what it is. It's what it is. So I'm not fighting for President Donald Trump. I don't have anything to prove. President Trump won with approximately 80 million votes. Cannot, put aside the landslide victory that he won by. And as a nonpartisan American citizen who did not vote Democratic or Republican, okay, I wrote in my Lord is Christ. So this is what we're doing right now. And we're going to set the record straight, because finally we got some people who's been through the fire, who's refined and who are ready to work for we the people. And if you did not, the head of the Constitution is in Old English writing, and it says we the people. So we people are pretty much walking away from our Democratic elected officials, because clearly they're not supporting American people. And as a black man, I am appalled of these hoochies and hood rat, these elected officials that gets on the legacy media and just be popping and acting ignorant, have no class. Because when I was coming up, we had to have class, pride, and dignity. Okay. These sorority sisters, the Chucks and Pearls, and they do things on a different level. But then somehow, some way, you got these internet sensations, basically raiding around as, elected officials in the form of Jasmine Crockett. And I got issues with this female, because what our ancestors have built, they're literally trying to tear it down. This is what I'm starting to understand. They're trying to tear it down because Trump, Elon, J.D. Vance is in the cockpit. And when you see a Democratic elected official say, we got to take down Trump, you're taking down the pilot that's driving the plane. OK, one of the greatest metaphors when it comes to leadership, because if you take Trump down, that means you're crashing out and you taking down America. And I don't understand why we're not sitting back trying to understand how important these tariffs are. Because like I said, I did a video and I had Nancy Pelosi speaking on the House floor, and she was pretty much grilling China. She was appalled. She was mad. She was angry because China has been taking advantage of the United States for far too long. Now we have a president that's in office that's decided to match their tariffs, or at least half the tariffs. And now you talk about a trade war. Let's be smart, right? Think about this. So if America charging tariffs on goods and services that come in a foreign perspective into a United States, when those foreign countries are charging tariffs on America, how is that possible that America could start a trade war? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You guys has been charging America tariffs. So now when we have a sitting president that says, you know what, I'm going to use the tariffs as a bargaining tool. I'm going to use the tariffs as leverage. I'm going to basically put America first, because we've lost our jobs to these foreign nations. We lost our industries to these foreign entities. And we're going to bring these entities back in terms of jobs, in terms of the plants, in terms of a whole lot of things. Because I go on and on about the good news, because Hyundai has come to the table. They're building factories and steel mills in Georgia and Louisiana. They're going to actually make the parts that make the cars here in America to avoid tariffs. Taiwan, the chip maker, or the largest chip manufacturer worldwide, has been to the House, cut a deal. They're pretty much putting a manufacturing operation in Arizona, and they're going to make the chips here. NVIDIA has cut a deal. OK, think about that. Think about that. And then you have China, who wants to start a trade war. But we don't need China. China needs us. So we could care less, because we got Japan in our back pocket. Everybody else is coming to the table. So think about it. When these tariffs went into play, it gave them to April 2nd. And the president heard the American people. He didn't hear the Democrats. OK, his team reached out to me, inboxed me, appreciated what I was doing in terms of informing the American people, because we didn't want to take the hit. So what did he do? He put the tariffs on hold for 90 days. The stock market shot back up, which is outperforming, what it did in 2008, the banking debacle. Okay, our 401ks are back up. That's for the working class and the American people. So when they say that he doesn't care about the working class, that bald-faced lie, because he hears the American people. He hears and he understands and he wants to win. That. So this is why his billionaire friends are beneficiaries of his administration. But when they talk about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, which has already been introduced, those are solely working class bills. Because if you get your tips of a wage earner in the form of a waitress, you're parking cars, you may even be a pole dancer, but you are working for a wage. And he's talking about taxing that. No tax on overtime. Anybody a wage earning job, if you work over 8 hours, okay, you make time and a half. If you work over 12 hours, double time. And then when you get your check, you sit back and say, what happened to the money? Because the federal government took all your extra expenditures because you were taxed at a higher tax bracket because that time and a half and that double time. And the nurses and police officers, firemen, they could attest to this. So when they talk about no tax on overtime, think about the nest egg you could store up. Think about the monies that you can have. Pay attention and understand that that is solely for the working class. And also, no tax on Social Security. To my understanding, you don't make over $2,300 a month from a Social Security perspective is not taxed. This is what they're telling me. Okay, I have to confirm it. But if you make over that, taxes on Social Security, that's for a person that's retired, not a retired Republican, not a retired Democrat, but a retired individual who dedicated their entire life to work. Okay, think about that. Those working class bills. So now the Democrats are crashing out. Okay, they're crashing out. So now the American people are saying, let's push the line. How the Secretary of Commerce is pretty much, talking about tax exemption wage earners earning less than $150,000. That's for the working class. So now, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or indifferent, the working class. This is why you have to share this information, have these conversations, challenge your legislators so we can actually do the will of the people. And when I was coming up, we used to wear these bracelets and it said, what would Jesus do? We're doing what did Jesus do? So we're doing what Jesus did. And what Jesus documented in the Bible, in the book of Matthew, he said he didn't come to change the scribe or the Pharisees, which is today's modern day liberals and conservatives. He came to fulfill. So our jobs as the working class coalition is the will of the people. And I have been selected as a select position as a special ambassador to Black American and humanitarian affairs, which covers the working class and the middle class. It has nothing to do with race, because our job and our long-term goal is to end racism. And to create one race under God, one race under God. And we're going to have these conversations. So this is why I do what I do. Some too early, sometime you're too late, sometime you're right on time. And right now, we are not going to sit back and let the Democratic Party crash the plane that we're riding on just because Donald J. Trump, JD, and Elon Musk is in the cockpit. Let them do their job. Let's take the ride. Let's be the beneficiaries of what's going on, because the working class has paid America's bills far too long and not got anything out of the deal. So we have to figure this thing out, because how do we fix it? A tax reform, okay? Tax is something to talk about. Here in the state of California, where I'm from, okay, we voted to build a train rail from Hollywood Boulevard to the 105 freeway, okay? And we voted, and Measure M passed, okay, unanimously, and Measure M basically put a 2-cent tax on the dollar. Okay, a 2 cents retail tax. And do you know within 6 months, they were $480 million. So a consumption tax. What's wrong with the American people getting from under the tutelage of the demonic Democratic Party, getting from under the haters, the Democratic Party, who wish ill will to the pilot and the co-pilot of the plane that we're riding on, and fighting for the rights of the people? And the first time in my lifetime, I've actually had an opportunity to see it come into play, because prior to that, their motivation was to destroy any, black power, anything that would actually, make the working class, and by an effect that it will bring the black plight or help black Americans, they're willing to destroy. And if you look at the Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act didn't do anything, because before we can actually celebrate and take a victory lap with the Civil Rights Act, they start pushing the feminist movement. And then after the feminist movement and then after the gay movement became the drugs and the crack. And here we're here right now, and we have a sitting president that's repealing and replacing a lot of those things, because when you talk class, a large volume of white Americans or any race or any creed falls in that same bracket. Okay. And without of black America, nothing will change. The only reason Trump won is because the black community did not for the first time after the Civil Rights Act support a candidate in the form of Kamala Harris. Think about that. Okay. Contrary to popular belief, the black community did not support the Democratic Party, because 13 million registered Democrats either did not show up at the polls or they voted down ballot, meaning for the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, Peace and Freedom Party, American Independent Party, write-in candidate, Jesus. And if you did not know, Mickey Mouse was the number one candidate for the write-in. Jesus Christ came in second. Okay. And this shows you that the black community has a whole lot of power. So now that the black community and the black race is not a stronghold for the Democratic Party, now you get to see how we operate outside of the Republicans and the Democrats, because our biggest and our greatest relationship is with God. So we got to do what the individuals that's elected does not have the power to do. And this is to do right by the people and facilitate the will of the people. So when you talk about the working class, where's our elected officials that's trying to support that? It's either the haves or the have-nots, and the Democratic Party needs a broke, busted, and disgusted class to even operate. This is why they somehow wanted an open border. Okay, because this is why somehow they wanted to be able to vote without an ID. This is how somehow they wanted, illegal immigrants to get Social Security cards, and that's crazy. And this is why the California is literally gone bankrupt and have to, find monies, because all these illegal immigrants are pretty much canceled out, the funding for free healthcare and the Medicaid and all that. So if you think, universal health care might be another opportunity for us to do something for working class, because just imagine if our hospitals and our doctors was regulated by the federal government, and their job was to pretty much everybody healthy, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the surgery is, it is not fair that an individual that does not have health care, cannot get critical surgeries. Think about that could actually save their life. They're sitting right there, and there's an individual sitting back, or your insurance don't cover this, so we're going to just sit back and just let you die. That's crazy. And if you did not know, Trump signed an executive action yesterday to pretty much put a cap on prescription drugs. That's working class. That's working class. Think about that. Because an influential individual, they can whatever the price is. So that's solely for the working class. And think about it. He signed a bill in legislation where there's no tariff on computers, smartphones, which includes your iPhones made in China, as well as your chips. Think about that. That's working class, because a rich and an influential individual actually pay whatever price for a phone. So when people talk about, they're going to raise the prices on the iPhones and all that, think about it. Trump and his team is paying attention, and they want to help the American people. So if there's no tariffs on smartphones, if there's no tariffs on computer chips, if there's no tariffs on computers or tech, who's the benefactor for that? The working class. Pay attention. Tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. Who's the benefactor? The working class. Tax exemption for wage earners earning less than $150,000. Who's the working class? The abolishment of capital gains tax, the abolishment of the death tax. Think about that. Who's the beneficiary or the benefactor for all of these bills and legislation that I just spoke on? The working class. So there's good news. So contrary to popular belief, the Trump administration is running up the score. The Democrats can't do anything but embarrass themselves during filibusters where they're pissing and pooping themselves. They can only go on national television and talk crap, ignorant. I don't know if it's just social media, but I know that of women with class and dignity. And I've had conversations that's appalled by what's going on. And then you have career elected officials, okay, that's out there that's not doing anything for the people because they can only work for their personal disposition as well as the donors. Because when I saw the press conference yesterday with Gavin Newsom talking about he's suing the Trump administration for the that has a 9-day hold that we have not felt anything, and he's sitting there with almond, people who make almonds and all of this stuff, it just shows you that a handful of rich, influential people, okay, if you like China, could pay you off to get you to go against everything that you're supposed to be believing in, supporting, and representing to be the opposition. Why, Gavin? Why? Why would you do that? Why are you going and fight against the pilot you wanted to cry out when you're in a state, a sanctuary state in cities like California, in cities like LA, Oakland, San Francisco, who has a homeless crisis, where you're funding and budget from coming to Los Angeles, California, because you can't even account for the homeless money that was basically put out there. Okay, you spent billions of dollars on rail, you only not even put miles up. So what's going on? There's a whole lot that you could be doing. You're getting paid off by China. We understand that you're getting paid off by, evildoers in high places. We understand that these companies that's benefiting, from, selling almonds and pomegranates and all of that, because somehow, some way, the water, which wasn't in California to put these wildfires out, was pretty much being funneled to pretty much grow their crops because they're your major. It is what it is. Corruption is real. Administration is exposing. So this is what I'm saying. If you are a Democrat, get out now, because the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. It's the party of the Jim Crow South. It's the party of mass incarceration. It's the party of pain. Okay, so if you look at up 20 of the worst cities in the United States, 18 of the 20 cities ran by Democrats. Think about that. And Nevada flipped to independent and Stockton flipped to Republican. So think about this. So when you talk about the migrant situation, why should we have an open border? Why did the Democrats open the border? Why did the Democrats get so loose on crime? Think about it. Under the Democratic administration, you can go and steal goods and services less than $1,000 and they can't even prosecute you. Think about that. Why are they doing that? Why? Only they know, but, the first time, shame on me. The first time, second time, shame on you. So the joke's on them now because you look not smart. You guys are embarrassing. And when I sit back and look at people that look like me, that's elected officials who's supposed to be, have class and dignity, Ivy School and all of this stuff, and to get on TV and to pop it like they some city hot girl, some hood rat, or some hoochie, that is embarrassing, it's rude, and it's disrespectful. And this is why the American people, Party, the Black Coalition, has stepped away from the Democratic Party. And there's like, where's the Congressional Black Caucus? These black leaders, why are they not having press conferences holding the sitting president accountable with the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, tax exemption for wage earners earning less than $150,000, abolishment of capital gains tax, a 10% flat tax across the board, a $5,000 stimulus check from Doge, a $3,800 stimulus check from the federal. Why our Democratic elected officials are not having press conferences talking about that? Because those bills and the things that I aforementioned will be solely for the working and middle class. Think about that. Think about that. So we got to figure this thing out. We got to get to the next level. And at the end of the day, American people have to come together and fight for what's right. Because like I said, we're not here to change the Republican Democrats. We're here to feel the will of the people and to hold that Constitution as our legal document to make things right. Because the Constitution talks about domestic tranquility. Why are we sitting here having homeless? Okay, like Tupac said, we got money for war, but we can't feed the poor. Think about that. We got so much money, we could take care of everything. We could have universal health care. We could have everything. Every essential need can be taken care of, but capitalism is the issue. But we can have what we call the win-win and have a form of capitalism and socialism at the same time, because it's about social economics at this point. We got to figure this thing out. We can and we will. Okay. And you guys went crazy in that comments. I'm not going to go there today. And, I'm about to jump on the Zoom and about to go fight and talk about, laws, legislation for the working class. So pray for me as I pray for you. And like I said, we can't just sit back for the next 4 years. This man is I think it's just getting to 100 days, doing an amazing job for this country, America first. Okay, let's figure this thing out. Let's work together. It's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's about the working class, and the working class is the middle class. So with that being said, you guys have an amazing day. I'm your man, Bushan Glover, signing out, Special Ambassador to Black American and Humanitarian Affairs. You guys have a great day. Peace out.